Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. We have an exciting presentation on the Apple ecosystem, and in particular, looking at two reports that Jamf has recently released about security of Macs and mobiles. And as we await attendees coming on, I think many of you know to possibly put into the chat where you're coming from, the weather, and possibly indicate what your perception is of the Apple ecosystem, and to see at the end of the seminar if your thoughts have changed. So as we know, SASIG is not a selling opportunity, and this is exactly in that category. The webinar is about how we can learn more about what the Apple ecosystem is about. What are its features, how it differentiates from other devices and opportunities. And having that knowledge, then it's up to everyone, their organizations and individuals, to decide if it meets their business objectives, taking into account risks, does meet and work with your other operations in your business. So it's not a selling opportunity, but how we learn more about what Apple has to offer and how it differentiates. So before we go, we have some news about SASIG itself. Anna, if you can do the next slide on some of the conduct of the webinars. We have house rules. We try to adhere to the Chatham House rule, which means that you can use the information that you learned today, but please do not cite the names of the speakers and questioners. Sometimes, though, that is allowable by the permission of the speakers. We welcome everyone takes part. If you have questions or comments during today, please put in the chat or during the Q&A. We hope to be interactive, and some questions we can answer as the session evolves to help clarifications, and other questions will wait towards the end. And of course, as you know, please do give feedback on today's session, any future topics you have, and how you also might wish to get involved. There will be a poll at the end of the webinar, and you can at other time drop a line to SASIG for any other views and ways you wish to participate. So Anna, next slide, please. In terms of SASIG opportunities that are upcoming, we have, in fact, tomorrow, a slide on strategies for cyber risk elimination. Well, maybe reduction is more hopeful. You will hear from Qualys about cyber risk quantification and threat intelligence to prioritize your vulnerability and patch management. Then on Monday, there'll be a debate on whether security awareness training should perhaps become more human cyber risk management, and how AI and intelligent systems can help with that. And then on the Tuesday, how particular non-traditional groups might be better approached to help them deal with cyber risk. And then on Wednesday, we have CrowdStrike talking about AI. Well, of course, we need something about AI. Not only our adversaries using AI, but also how enterprises can use it to develop their security posture. So not only webinars, Anna, but we also have in-person events. There is a break during August, and so we resume in September in Scotland, looking at the future of cyberspace that includes data protection. Tuesday, the 14th of October, very important, increasingly how the board can better understand what to them might seem technical attacks, but they, at the end of the day, are accountable for what happens to their firm and to make sure it remains viable. And then on later in October, we have the Awareness SASIG, which is the deep dive into the human aspects of cybersecurity, held at BT. And then Legal SASIG, very important too, in light of many regulations coming up, we have the series continuing there in November at EY. Okay, and of course, a major event coming up, Anna, if you can do that, is the International Cyber Expo that SASIG has been doing in conjunction with the 19 group. So please do keep an eye up for that and sign up there. Next slide, please. And of course, this is about our supporters, and without whom we cannot, SASIG cannot hold its wonderful events for free. We have supporters and contributors, and our speakers today from Jamf are contributors amongst that list there. Okay, so we're ready to talk about the Apple ecosystem. I'm looking forward to what Apple has to offer, and we all learn more about what Jamf does to support. They don't sell, but they support your interest in making Apple systems work in your organization. And I now move to Dino and Arab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivia. I'm just going to share my screen and then we'll get going. Let's just share here. Everyone can see that okay. I'm on my slides and we should be good to go. Okay, so welcome everyone and thanks for joining us for Apple Threats Unpacked. This is 2025, our Security 360 Insights. Let me just move this out of the way here, for Mac and mobile. Now, I'm Aaron Webb, Director of Product Marketing for Security here at Jamf. And my role focuses on helping organizations understand how to better secure their Apple environments. And today we're here to unpack the key security trends shaping the Apple threat landscape in 2025. I see, Peter, you've already put in the chat, like the Apple being a walled garden, but not as secure as people think. We're definitely going to dive into that. So thank you for that comment. And throughout this session, we'll break down real-world data, highlight emerging risks. We'll share actionable steps for your organization to help you strengthen your Apple security posture. If you've got them in your organization, that would be great to hear. So this is open. Please throw all your thoughts into the chat. We want to make this quite interactive. And I also want to introduce Dino. So Dino, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Dino Minutolo, the Director of Security Operations here at Jamf. I run all things Blue Team, so vulnerability management, detections and response, and security engineering for here at Jamf. I've been here for a little over 10 years, I do believe now, and I'm based out of Minneapolis, so lovely to be here.
Great, you've got a true global team. I'm from Essex. I see someone else is from Chelmsford, just down the road, so very sunny here. So great to see you, and let's get cracking. So here's a quick view of what we're going to cover today. We'll start with the problem and addressing why Apple security is now really a critical concern, what's changed and why it demands the attention. Then we'll look at the reality and we'll walk through the 2025 threat landscape, highlighting some key trends and emerging risks targeting Apple platforms. And then we're going to do a deep dive. So we'll explore like 3 major categories in more detail: social engineering and phishing, vulnerabilities and exploits, and then malware and app risks. And we're going to give you some real world examples and some insights. And Dino's going to join me for a fireside chat. So please do jump in with your questions throughout. We will take some at the end, but if you've got something that's relevant, please put in a comment or put in a question and we'll take them as we go. Finally, we'll wrap up with some actionable steps for security leaders that you can take right now to better protect your Apple fleet, or things to take away to start to think about how you can bring Apple into your security posture. So don't be shy, please put in as many questions as you've got there. And with that, let's get going. So first, I want to actually just dispel some myths, really, is that we all know that no solution works in isolation, especially in today's complex IT environments. And that's why we here at Jamf have strategic partnerships with industry leaders like Apple, Microsoft, Google, AWS, and Okta. And through these partnerships and these deep integrations with identity providers, cloud platforms, and security tools, we help organizations simplify how they deploy, manage, and secure Apple devices. Now, whether it's streamlining authentication, automating workflows, or enhancing security, we're designed to sort of seamlessly work with the tools that you already use to create more integrated and efficient Apple experience, which all leads into our mission of how we help organizations succeed with Apple. So with that background, let's get into why Apple security matters now more than ever. So Apple adoption is growing rapidly in businesses of all sizes. And if you're seeing this, please put this in the chat, because I've been to RSA this year, I've been to Gartner, and we're hearing it a lot more from customers. But with that growth comes increased attention from threat actors. And many still assume Apple devices are inherently safe. You put that in the chat, Peter. It's a great call out. But the reality is that attackers are developing more advanced, more targeted methods to exploit them. And today we're going to explore why securing Apple is no longer optional, it's essential. Many organizations are seeing Mac growth, or at least a strong user demand for it. IDC and Gartner all agree, reporting a major shift towards Macs. The next generation of workers grew up with them and they expect them at work. Macs aren't niche anymore. They're becoming more of a preferred choice across industries. And instead of resisting, we're seeing more and more security professionals and organizations focus on how to support, secure, and understand really how Apple works in their environments. It's very different to Windows. So there's some similarities, there's some differences. But what we really want to do is educate people on how to bring Apple into your security posture. And there's a problem with that Apple increase. Like most organizations face what we call the Apple adoption gap. Many users want to use Apple, but there's a gap on how to support Apple in the enterprise. However, that growing adoption does bring challenges, and many of our teams are not familiar with managing Macs, especially when they're used to Windows, and that knowledge gap is real. And many organizations still treat Macs or Apple devices as an exception. They don't know how to fully integrate them into their existing infrastructure. So without a clear strategy and a lack of understanding, it can lead to security blind spots, which we want to cover today. Now, security blind spots on Apple, but you're probably saying, whoa, there is no security blind spots on Apple. Apple's secure out the box. Apple is very secure. It's a very secure platform. There's loads of built-in right from the device level right the way through to the apps that they use. But that threat landscape is real and evolving fast. And while Macs remain secure by design, attackers are finding new ways to bypass built-in protections, and many security tools also miss them as well. And that's why we created Jamf Threat Labs, a team dedicated to uncovering new malware, zero-day exploits, advanced Mac attacks before they strike. So from gatekeeper exploits to sophisticated malware, Jamf Threat is leading the charge in Apple security. We work very closely with Apple to help patch some of those and raise CVEs up there, and helping the wider community. It's not just our customers that benefit from this, it's anyone with an Apple device. Feel free to jump in, Dino, if you want to add any context to this as I punch through and give some background. So, and their research is critical. Jamf Threat Labs, and we'll come on to why it's critical in a minute, but it's critical for Apple community, especially organizations using Apple devices who still believe that Macs don't get viruses. Macs face a growing wave of targeted threats. Attackers are rapidly developing new exploits, including Mac stealers and gatekeeper bypasses, many of which go undetected by traditional security tools. And as Mac adoption rises in the enterprise, so does the appeal to the threat actors. So our Threat Labs team put together this research. They do many blogs, but what they do is they put together the annual trends report. And actually this year we've broke them out into Mac and mobile. We know a lot of organizations want to focus on Mac, or they're not quite ready for mobile yet, or they've got a specific team that deal with mobile. So this year we've broken it out to Mac and mobile. There's 2 reports that you can download here. Feel free to download them afterwards. You'll also get a link in a follow-up email. There's some short links on the screen, but we'll dive into some of the high levels parts of this throughout this session, and that's what this chat's going to be around. So it's highlighting those emerging risks, the attacker tactics, the evolving threat landscape, and helping you stay informed and proactive throughout this session and beyond. So let's take a closer look at the 2025 threat landscape for Apple devices. We'll uncover some of the most significant trends this year. I'm going to do just a whistle-stop tour of those reports to give you a background, and it sets the stage for those deeper dives that are coming next. So looking firstly at the user and device risk perspective, info stealers are on Mac up 28% from last year, showing a clear rise in targeted malware. 1 in 10 users clicked a phishing link, and this all comes from our live data. You're seeing this, the report that this is coming from some customer feedback. It's coming from our threat research team. It's coming from some what we're seeing in the market. So all the context is given in the 360 reports. 1 in 10 users, as I said, are clicking on a phishing link, proving that phishing remains highly effective. And we'll come on to that in a bit about like phishing attacks don't care what devices you're on. And me and Dino will dive into that in a little bit. Over 55% of mobile devices are running vulnerable OS versions, exposing them to known risks. And with side-loading apps expanding, especially on mobile, we are seeing spyware risks growing fast, depending on what region you're in as well. So these numbers show just how important it is to stay proactive in defending your Apple fleets, or at least starting to get visibility into them. Phishing, as I said, remains a top attack vector across both Mac and mobile. As I said, 1 in 10 phishing links, 1 in 10 users click a phishing link. The most commonly spoofed brands include Amazon, Outlook, Netflix, UPS. Here in the UK, we obviously see like Royal Mail come up quite a bit as well. All familiar usernames that our users trust. On mobile, phishing is even more successful due to smaller screens and frequent multitasking, which makes it easier to miss the warning signs. So this is a clear reminder that user awareness and layered protections are critical. The vulnerabilities and patch management are a major challenge for many organizations. We're seeing 32% of organizations have devices with patchable critical vulnerabilities. Timely patching is essential, and tools like rapid security responses. So if you're familiar with Apple and how they sort of send out their updates, they have a rapid security response now to patch without updating the whole operating system or moving to a new OS. And MDM, mobile device management, are key to staying ahead. It's important to strike the right balance between security and user experience to avoid disruption. And we see that a lot. Apple users are very expected to use the Apple device in a very certain way. So especially on a Mac, they want admin rights, but that opens up a headache for security teams that you don't want everyone to have an admin role on their device, especially when accessing corporate data and information. And attackers are also exploiting bypasses in core macOS protections like Gatekeeper and TCC, making patching and monitoring even more critical. And finally, malware and exploits are evolving quickly, especially with recent platform changes, and app vetting and MDM controls, again, critical, reducing across both Mac and mobile. Sideloaded apps, especially after the Digital Markets Act change, are increasing the attack surface, particularly on mobile. So if you're seeing that in Europe, or if you've got organization, part of your organization operates in Europe, we are seeing that sideloaded apps are a concern for people with the Digital Markets Act coming in.
Aaron,
yeah.
Aaron, for a second, can you explain? Not everyone might know what sideloaded apps means. That means taking apps not from the Apple Store, or if you can elaborate there.
Yeah, correct. Dino, do you want to jump in and give a bit of context to sideloading apps?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously everyone is familiar with the Apple App Store. A sideloaded app is essentially an app that you can install from a third-party app store. So anything that's not vetted by Apple would be considered a sideloaded app. So anything that bypasses any of those checks that Apple builds into the development process and the vetting process would be a sideloaded app in this case.
And is it that the devices are inherently not allowing third parties, or is it like in other systems you can opt in to have third parties apps loaded down?
For iPhones, natively, you'll use the App Store. For Mac OS, obviously, it's a bit easier just because you can download anything from the internet. But for iOS or iPhone OS now, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. But as we grow and expand, it's becoming a bit more common.
But so far that has helped minimize particular types of attacks. You know, the attackers
Correct.
can't get around, so that's a good thing in many ways. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But obviously the changes to that Digital Markets Act, which have allowed that to happen, do obviously bring some security concerns to people. So that's something that we're seeing. And then sorry, go on, Olivia.
The DMA, this is the US law of 1998 or so? Digital Millennium Act, or?
No, the Digital Markets Act in Europe.
Okay, and maybe you can, and what that allows what now?
It allows the use of sideloaded apps, so you don't need to go through the Apple Store in order to download. So before you would only be quite a protected area. You could only upload iOS apps to the phone. With the Digital Markets Act, they've kind of exposed that to being like, no, you should be allowed to download or use apps or sideload apps from any store that you want. So that's exposing the risks to those iPhone users.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. Just jump in with any questions. I'm trying to monitor the chat as well. I've got multiple screens going, so if you've got anything, please throw them in and do interrupt. And then common Mac malware includes info stealers, ransomware, remote access tools, making proactive detection and control really essential. So that's a bit of background. That gives you some context over to what the reports have got. If you want to download them and read them in more detail, if you've got any questions too, please reach out to us. But what we want to now do is switch to the deep dive and do a bit more of a fireside chat. So Dino, thank you very much for joining me today. We'll start with social engineering and phishing. And what I really want to start with is what makes phishing especially potent on macOS, or does it even?
Yes, it is potent, and it's potent because, much like phishing anywhere else, the entry point for phishing is completely technology agnostic. It does not care about what you're using. It doesn't care about the endpoint. It cares about the user. It cares about how savvy they are. You don't have to have a stack of technology. You don't have to be sponsored by a nation state. You don't have to have the expertise of someone that's been trained for years. You have to be sharp. You have to be witty. You have to know how to write an email. And that could be your entry point. It doesn't care. It doesn't care if you're on Mac OS. It doesn't care if you're on iPhone OS. It doesn't care if you're on Windows. It can get through because the user is vulnerable at that point. And that's why it's potent, and that's why it's still used today as one of the most common entry points for almost every attack. So there's a reason it's so successful.
Yeah.
And that's where good traditional cyber hygiene and security awareness is often seen as a major way to deal with or to contribute to raising awareness about phishing.
Yeah, you see so many employees kind of roll their eyes whenever you tell them that you're doing, phishing training or campaigns to kind of combat that. But it statistically speaking, it does work to lower your click rates for phishing emails. And you also have to think that you have to take a layered approach to security. Like Aaron said before, there's no silver bullet. There's no one product that's going to instantly, push a button and make you secure. You have to take a layered approach because credentials will get compromised. It's not if, it's when. So you always have to make sure that you've got multiple layers keeping your environment secure. So.
Yeah. And Dino, Mac OS is built secure by design, right? So it's got some built-in features that kind of help people at a sort of a level, right? But how does that then, what do you need to layer on top? You talked about layers in when you start getting into the enterprise, because it is secured by design, but this is becoming more and more sophisticated ways in which they're utilizing the entry point through phishing.
A good endpoint security tool is always something that you should have. MFA is always something that I advocate for. If you don't have endpoint security in MFA, you're kind of behind the curve already. Those
MFA,
two are kind of
MFA acronyms, just in case not everyone may know all the acronyms as you do.
Absolutely. Multi-factor authentication. So any type of multi-factor authentication, whether it's a hardware token, software token, biometrics, anything of that nature, it's table stakes at this point. Always have some sort of multi-factor authentication. Those two, like I said, table stakes. You've got to have them. A robust password policy, as simple as it may sound, have a robust password policy. Make sure that you're either using long, complex passwords or you're rotating them on a very regular basis, one or the other, or both. It's stuff like that most companies are already doing, but again, you sometimes need to reiterate it. So.
And it's making sure that you've got visibility into your Macs in the first place, right? Because you may have some people using those devices for work applications or accessing work data, but you've not got no visibility into what they're even using. It's like, oh, so-and-so's turned up to work today with a Mac, or and it kind of then starts to ring some bells that actually we should be doing something on this device.
Yes, and if there's one takeaway from this this webinar, it's we're going to touch on this later. It's that MDM is security. I think you and I have talked about this already, Aaron. Having visibility into your fleet is
And MDM, mobile device management.
Correct.
Correct,
Mobile
yes.
device management. Having that visibility into your fleet, having that inventory, knowing what applications are on those devices, knowing what is connected to those devices, is integral to your security. If you are not thinking that MDM is security, you need to start thinking that way.
There's a comment in the chat about Santa. I thought for a moment on a quick read it was a scam, but Santa is your Mac OS security agent that offers binary file access authorization and event logging if it's enabled. Do you have a view on that, on how that assists?
I do not. I have not looked into it. So
okay,
I
it's
would
by
probably
a company, North Pole Dev, North Pole Security. So this came out in early 20. Anyway, we'll give you time to check that out during the course of the seminar. We'll come back to that. Thank you, Sakil.
It sounds good. I love the marketing effect on that North Pole Dev, and
yes,
I don't know if someone's spoofing us.
No, but it's there. That it is. I have also looked it up myself before I was asking this question. So, Thank you, Sakil, for raising more awareness. Thank you.
More awareness. That's like a present that keeps on giving.
Yes.
That one. So how does this compare on mobile devices, Dino? Because I know that we're seeing a lot of obviously people, I think, that when they're using a Mac, they have to click, or they're using it for work, or they're using a Windows device, or they're kind of like got that work brain on. But when you're using a mobile device, it's kind of that we're seeing in this report that attacks are more effective. Like what's your sort of comments around like mobile attacks or phishing attacks that are happening via mobile?
Subconsciously, I think people disconnect work and phones because we're so used to using our phones for leisure activities, playing games, scrolling through social media, looking at Instagram posts, TikTok, stuff like that. We let our guard down, and that's why they're so much more successful on mobile devices than they are on your Mac OS, your laptop device.
Yep.
You have to think about the ways to communicate on a mobile device as opposed to Mac OS as well, and how much time, iPhone OS device as opposed to a Mac OS device, and how much time you're spending. If you compare your screen time numbers on your mobile device versus your laptop, most of the time you're spending on your laptop, again, you're going to be working. Most of the time you're going to be spending on your mobile device, you're probably not going to be working. Look at the apps that you're looking at. Look at the apps that you're playing on. Again, you're not going to be thinking of security when you're playing a game or scrolling through TikTok, and then you just go to your email and you scroll through a couple of emails and accidentally click on something. So we let our guard down inherently when we're on our mobile devices, I think. And that's why you see those numbers.
Great, thank you. So we mentioned in the sort of the recap slides earlier that attackers exploiting user trust in high profile brands. Can you tell us a bit more about like what you're seeing there, especially with like the likes of, I know in the US it'd be like Chase, Netflix is obviously huge as well. We see Apple come through a lot, like your iTunes account, or is often one that comes through on emails. But any context around like the profile of brands?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the one thing that we all have in common, aside from working in the industry, that we have in common with almost everyone else on the planet is that we're consumers. We trust our money with these companies. We trust our information. We trust our data. We trust our family's information, whether it's professionally or whether it's personally. We inherently trust all of these big brands. And again, when we see those logos, when we see when we see an email from these brands, some people can let their guard down a little bit, and attackers are going to capitalize on that. Malicious actors are going to capitalize on that. The old adage was, if it's too good to be true, don't click on it. And attackers have evolved. So now they know not to say, hey, we're going to give you $1 million because we're royalty from another country. It's, hey, here's 3 months of iTunes for free. Click this link, because that's not something that's outside of the realm of possibility. And again, they do it because it works. There's a reason why phishing attacks are still used to this day, because people still click those links and people still trust those logos, and people still will say, well, I could use 3 months of iTunes for free, or of Netflix for free. So it's, you trust these brands, you let your guard down, and all of a sudden you've got someone's personal information. So that's what happens.
On the high profile brands angle, there was a time when we heard that hackers like bragging rights if they could say, "Oh yes, we hacked into this big place."
Yeah.
Is that still prevalent, or is it more that it's really become a commercial criminal organization to get money?
Look at how many times companies like Sony and their online network for PlayStation have gone down for no other reason than organizations just to laugh at people not being able to play games online. It's, bragging rights are still something that are important to some people. They will bring down an entire network so they can literally just go on Twitter and brag about it. So it's still something that people will do.
Yeah. So great context around phishing. There's some great chat going on in the chat as well. Just general people's thoughts as well. So keep that coming. That's great. Let's move on to some vulnerabilities and exploits and sort of dive into that. So we see 32% of Apple fleets running devices with patchable CVEs. So how do security teams and CISOs prioritize action, Dino, on this?
For me personally, I think you have to go beyond the CVSS score. I know we've all dealt with high compliance.
Sorry, that's another acronym there, just to explain that that's one source of vulnerabilities that people can tune in, that CISOs can tune into.
The Common Vulnerability Scoring System.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But I think all of us have dealt with audits and high compliance environments where we have to go by, your normal low, medium, high, critical, and patch those vulnerabilities within a certain SLA, which we all have to check that box. I understand that. But you need to get context around your impact radius and the risk appetite that you have. And that's where that inventory comes in. That's where that view into your fleet comes in. Is a critical really a critical if it's on one user endpoint? Do you want to prioritize that one critical on that one user endpoint when you can prioritize patching a medium that might be on 200 endpoints? Having that context is where you really need to get your vulnerability management program, because that critical might not be a critical. Having context around other secondary scoring system, like the EPSS, exploit prediction scoring system. It's newer. It's by an organization called First, but it takes factors into account such as if the vulnerability is actually being exploited in the wild. Factoring in that type of information is, again, something that you need to look at. If it's not something where you're just checking a box for an audit, look at those types of scores, cross-reference them, correlate all that information, and come up with your own risk your own risk formula and figure out where your actual threshold for risk is, and base your vulnerability management around that.
Yeah, great. And as we said earlier, if you've not got visibility into those Macs in the first place, or those Apple devices in the first place, you don't even know which vulnerabilities that they may be running, or which apps that they're running. So that, as you said it before, Dino, that inventory, that visibility, and then the ability to take action once you've identified those CVEs, because you might be saying, we found something on a web browser that we use. We need to patch this pretty quickly. You pretty much know what you're going to be doing on your Windows fleet, right? The majority of people in the majority of organizations are a Windows heavy shop, and it's like straight away you know what to do there. But if you've got blind spots with your Apple devices, you don't even know where to even patch, or even if you've got someone running a vulnerability there that you don't even know about. So as you said before, I think management on visibility is key, and even telemetry afterwards is right. We're seeing a lot more of those single pane of glass and bringing out that Mac specific telemetry into, whether it's like Splunk, Datadog, whoever you use as a SIM is super valuable.
Well, I was going to say, that's what, I mean, we had these struggles early on in our vulnerability management program as well, where we would see a critical and we try to figure out how we patch it as quickly as possible, until we realized, let's get a little bit deeper into this. And that critical would be on one user endpoint because of an application that they didn't even remember that they installed. So it wasn't a matter of patching it. It was a matter of getting in touch with that end user and saying, hey, remove this application. And we automated that. We created a Slack bot to do that for us. So again, vulnerability management, sometimes it's not even patching. It's being creative about what you're doing and that risk threshold. So.
Great, thank you. Great context. I know this is a hot topic of yours, Dino, right? This is probably
I love this topic. I really do.
Great stuff. So in that case, then, you being like the SME for us here, like, what does the ideal vulnerability management program look like for that hybrid Mac and PC environment? As we're hearing in the chat that most people have got a handful of Macs in departments. They may be seeing some growth, but like, they really need that visibility. And how do they approach this, especially if they're not used to dealing with like a Mac or understanding the Apple security ecosystem?
Making sure you have that telemetry, making sure you have that inventory data for both fleets. Again, making sure you have a good MDM solution for both sides of the house. That's step one. Track your vulnerabilities and track the devices that they're on, track the applications that they're in. Get that contextual data and start using a secondary score, both sides of the house. The vulnerabilities themselves, great to get, but make sure you have that secondary source of data. Check those boxes where you have to check those boxes to make sure that you're passing all of your audits. We all have to do it. We understand that. But then come up with your own risk thresholds. Come up with your own risk appetite and figure out where you want to actually prioritize. Only you can do that. No one else can do that for you. But once you do that, then you can start working on how you actually want to address those risks.
We have a comment from John Reeves saying that Mac Mobile is easier with existing cross-platform tools. So it sounds some hybridity there.
I think I would tend to agree. Mobile is easier, especially with the App Store. And inherently, it's, again, everything is vetted by Apple through the App Store. But as we move to, third-party app stores being more and more prevalent, and those checks being removed from those apps in those third-party app stores, you're gonna start to see a shift. And I don't think it's going to get any easier for security teams. You're going to start to see problematic mobile devices.
Yeah, and I'm hearing, being at Gartner this year in National Harbour, there was a shift before to sort of consolidate and use like these cross-platform tools. Last year, mainly a push on from finance actually, to be like, we need to consolidate, save some money. And then this year, I've seen a real trend in sort of saying we need to break this apart. We need some defense in depth. We need different tools that do the right things for the right things that we're trying to look at, to really kind of, it's all coming together, right? You need I think your single pane of glass would be your sort of your Splunk, your seam of choice, whatever that may be, Elastic,
Yes.
Sentinel, etc. I think that's that cross-platform tool that we're seeing a lot of security teams sort of adopt. But you still need to have, like, you need to make sure that cross-platform tool, if you are using one just across your fleet for MDM, for example, can do the right protocols and demands, because mobile device management framework, the MDM framework that Apple produce, is shifting to what's called declarative device management, DDM. And that's a different way of working, and not everyone embraces that. It's quicker, it's faster, it's on device, and that means that you can just respond and get that status updates from those devices super quick. And I think that's something to consider when you're looking at different devices in your fleet as to what's the kind of benefits of using a cross-platform tool, and where are you going to get sort of blind spots at the same time.
So in effect, the cross-platform tool is good, for example, at the dashboard level, where you can see what's going on in different departments, etc. I came across an article recently that on the value of silos in organizations to deal with issues and compliance, etc., which is kind of counter to, oh, we need something enterprise-wide. But I think the two are not mutually exclusive, because, again, if someone has the management level has an awareness of what's going on in the silos can work hard at maintaining their usually they have particular security issues that are not necessarily enterprise-wide, etc.
Yeah, I think the silos are like those silos of expertise, but you kind of still need to break down some of those silos in order to have a sort of a response to whatever you're trying to tackle. And I think there's a question coming in from Chris about the added complexity of bring your own device, BYOD. What's your thoughts on how this affects vulnerability management approach, Dino? BYOD, obviously more of a phone issue, but I am seeing more Mac BYOD in some organizations as well.
BYOD always adds a layer of complexity, and we do what we can. So what we've done for BYOD is essentially keep a list of business critical apps that we can patch. Anything outside of that list, we try to work with the user to have them patch themselves. Again, this is where we kind of get creative and automate. Again, I run security engineering, so it's a little bit easier for me. But if you've got a way to work with your end users to nudge them and say, hey, it looks like you've got an application that has a flaw or a security, a vulnerability. Click this link. Here's where you can get the latest version. Work with your end users, build that trust, enable your end users. A lot of what we do is not about forcing anything. It's about enabling end users to kind of be independent. Help your users be independent. If they can do 50% of the job for you, push them that way. And you'll see that most of them just will do it. They haven't done it before because they just didn't know that they were supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, and that's a contribution to like the shadow IT or shadow apps. I think the CISO, and when I was working internal audit, we would want to know if the software developers were downloading A, B, C, D, and did they get their credit card out, buy this, that, and the other. And without having asked, first, is the organization already using such somewhere else, right? But we would want to know that they were doing it. We weren't stopping them, but in knowing that they were downloading things, possibly now side apps with the DMA, You want to know what's being downloaded so that when an incident occurs, then you have some knowledge about it and how to deal with it.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's a question, Sean, that you put in here about more about the Digital Markets Act. If I've got time, we can come back to that. But I'll give you just, it basically is yes. It's Apple will be forced to allow people to sideload apps without jailbreaking. So jailbreaking is how they used to sideload apps, but now the Digital Market Act opens that up and you do it through a third-party app store. So you are right, it is sideloading apps, not through the official Apple App Store, but through a third-party app store without jailbreaking the phone. So we can connect afterwards if you want to reach out to me and connect on either a LinkedIn or you want to share your email or come to us. We can chat more in detail about that with you as well. So moving on, let's go to a deep dive into malware and application risk as well. So Dino, should security teams know about the rise of info stealers? And this is something specific to Mac, right, that we're seeing in our 360 report, specifically targeting crypto and finance users. How would you sort of give some clarity around that and dive into info stealers?
Track your high-profile targets. Make sure you know who they are, and make sure you have a robust endpoint security solution. Doesn't matter what it is, but make sure that you've got something on those endpoints. Make sure that you've got everything reporting back in as near as real time as possible to whatever SIM that you have, or as near real time alerting as you could possibly have. Get that logging, get that alerting, and make sure that you're as proactive as possible. Reactive security, it's great and all, but you don't want to be behind the 8 ball when one of your users in finance has something going on their computer. So,
yeah, and I think you're talking there, rightly so, about that real-time reporting. I think it's good to just mention that Apple has, I mentioned before, the MDM framework that they build, the mobile device management framework that vendors can utilize to obviously build that out, and it's moving towards DDM, declarative device management, which will speed up that device status and that reporting. But also Apple, and this is when people are not quite aware, they offer an endpoint security API as well, very much like the MDM framework, an endpoint security API. So those tools that report should be utilizing the whole of that endpoint security API, because you need to have the right reporting, right? It's pointless putting a tool on there that's not really designed for Mac OS and it's not reporting the right things, because then you're blind. You need to have like the right tools, utilizing and taking the Apple system security and amplifying it to you so you can really make informed choices, rather than just, you think you've got reporting coming in, but it's not actually reporting the right things. And that's also a risk to security teams.
100%. One of the things that you hear from almost any SOC team or detections and response team is that if 90% of the logs that you're getting are noise, you can't do your job. So you can't sift through 100 logs to look for the one thing that you really need to look for. So make sure that you're focusing on what you need to focus on.
A question from Jonathan here. His DevOps team have admin accounts and claim they could not work without them. Do they invalidate any hardening or MDM, as you mentioned that, Aaron? So do the admin accounts invalidate any hardening or MDM applied to the devices?
So that's a great question. I was going to get to that one. It's probably the one that's most common, especially as Mac users work very differently. It's an admin rights by default to allow pretty much to download anything. And it's often one that comes up, especially with dev teams, app developers, etc. They need the admin rights. People need an admin right just to even install a printer on their Mac. There's tools like privilege elevation. So you can actually give everyone like a standard user account, and then they have to request an elevated admin right for a set period of time, which does get then put into your SIEM. So you can report on that. What happened at that particular time? Who elevated that privilege? What did they do when they had that admin right during that prime time process? Or Dino, you want to dive into a bit more detail, because we have admin rights. People have admin rights on their devices. You still use MDM protocol, and it still hardens the device, but there's ways in which you can balance that, right? Correct.
Correct. And for us, it's all about visibility. We have one, we eat our own dog food. We use Jamf Protect. Not everyone has that luxury, but we use Jamf Trust, JSC, Jamf Security Cloud. We use all of our own tools to get visibility into our fleet. We use Jamf Pro to get inventory data. We know what's installed everywhere. And we have everything logging to our SIM. We're monitoring all activity that we need to. Not everyone has that luxury, like I said. What I would say is, if you want to retain admin rights, do what you can to mitigate any risk by making sure that you can get that full visibility into user activity, behavioral analytics, and track all of that. Make sure that you have an audit trail of all of that activity. And again, near as possible to real-time alerting as you can.
Yep.
Okay, Aaron, I think we move on now. Great questions, and we want to at least see the punchlines towards the end. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we'll crack on. We've got 10 minutes to go. So I think we talked about side-loaded apps, and we talked about the Digital Markets Act. How can organizations prevent side-loaded apps, Dino? Let's just quickly touch on this, because a lot of people are talking about it in the chat. MDM, right? Mobile device management, preventing side-loaded apps.
Correct.
And making sure that the MDM does actually allow you to prevent side-loaded apps. Some are not utilizing the full mobile device management framework, right? They just do the basic across all devices, and it's not the same for Android as it is for Apple. So just something to be aware of when you're looking at an MDM solution, or you're using the tools that you've already got in your organization.
Yeah, supporting a robust block list and allow list of software that you want on your devices is something that you can do with a good MDM platform. And if there's something that you absolutely must not have in your environment that could be side-loaded, block it. Yep. Simple as that. Yep. You have to.
And that includes third-party app stores as well, right? You can actually block 100%. Third-party app stores.
Yeah,
you can
the
actually
app
block
stores
them completely.
Or the apps on them, you can block. So.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a related kind of question in the Q&A side. How can macOS Security Portal improve endpoint security compared to MS Defender endpoint?
Yeah, I would say having a endpoint security tool on your Macs is a great starting point, right? If you've that extra layer of protection, it really goes down to, as I sort of commented before, the endpoint security API is a framework that people can utilize. And not everyone utilizes that full framework. They'll take parts of that framework, or they'll actually just say this can be put onto a Mac device. It's really about what are you actually getting out of that tool, and what is it looking for? Is it looking for certain threats? Is it backed by a threat team, a threat research team? Is that threat research team looking for Apple-specific threats, or is it looking for general threats? All of this kind of feeds into that endpoint protection tool, and then it's only as good as what it's finding on the actual endpoint itself and what it's triggering as to what alerts you're going to get out as well. So we can dive into a bit more around that. If anyone wants to reach out, I've got a few sort of like Defender kind of like where people have used Defender. We can go into a bit more detail, but we won't go into that here. But that's kind of what you need to look at, is the endpoint security API that Apple produce and how those vendors are leveraging it. I'd also, just a comment as well, many vendors go and create their own 360 reports, some sort of annual trends. Download it, have a little look. What are they finding on Mac? I think you'll find that there's not many things that they pull out specifically that are Mac specific, and go and check out the Maestro Attack framework as well. Go and just see what is relevant to Apple and what is relevant to Windows as well. So that's the sort of comparisons that you want to take and make an informed decision over which vendors you want to go with. And your budget as well. Obviously, a budget is, as I said before, we've got great integrations with Microsoft. We're a part of a vendor. We're part of their security program. We work very closely with them. You could be using, you could be feeding that data into your Microsoft stack, because everyone's pretty much got that in the background. Right, let's get on to some action plans. What's the biggest Apple-focused risk that security teams still underestimate, Dino, from your perspective? And throw in the chat what your biggest risk is, or your most feared thing around your Apple fleet is.
I will kind of circle back to Peter's comment from earlier. I wanted to applaud as soon as I saw it. We are halfway through 2025, and I still hear people say, "Oh, it's secure because it's Apple." That is still one of the biggest risks that I see. People think that Apple is inherently secure. Apple has great security. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm not saying that it's not baked into their products, but again, there's no silver bullet. There's not one platform that's secure by design that's going to be 100% secure. There's not one product where you're going to push a button and say, I'm done. Security is not it's not a destination. It's a journey. So always be thinking about how you can do it better. And Apple is no different. You have to, again, have those layered approaches and always make sure that you're not resting on your laurels. Like that's
and the context of where the Apple device is being used and who is being used by as well, right, is super important, because that's the same device that you go and buy from an Apple store as to what you're going to buy and then bring it into your organization. It's that same device.
That again, that's where that MDM point comes in. It's incredibly important to have insight into your fleet. The more granular insight that you have, the more detailed insight that you have, the easier your job becomes as a security practitioner.
Perfect. Right, we're going to speed through this last one. Implement one change. I think I know what it's going to be, Dino. If you could implement one change tomorrow or not implement ours because we already utilize MDM, but what would your improve your security posture for your Apple fleets be? What would your one piece of advice be that people do today or tomorrow?
I would say, again, going back to that point, MDM is security. Make sure that you have that visibility. Incorporate it with your security program and make sure that you can see everything that you possibly can get visibility into.
Yeah, and harden those devices, right? Use compliance benchmarks. Make sure that you're trying to build in, if you're using the any sort of benchmarks, make sure that that's there and you can kind of start to monitor and then deploy when you're ready.
100%. Build your standards into your MDM platform. How you want to harden your endpoints should be built into your profiles in MDM. That's where you start. And that's where you kind of use as your jumping off point.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So final thoughts and takeaways. And really to sum up, I would say Apple targeted threats are growing rapidly. We're seeing that in volume. They're becoming more sophisticated and persistent. Let's just move this poll here. Let's come across my screen. We've got user behavior and app risks are now key security battlegrounds. The Security 360 reports that we provide and others, loads of other organizations do it. Download them because they do give you some great insights into it. Please check out as many as you can, whether it's from us or other vendors or your vendors that you're looking at or you use. They help you understand your fleet and the risk on those particular devices and endpoints, whether it be Apple or Windows devices or mobile devices as well. Integration is key to ensuring visibility to all endpoints. I think people have that myth that Apple needs to be on its own. It's not going to something that can be integrated into the enterprise environment or the work environment. It certainly can now. In fact, there's probably more Microsoft apps on the Apple Store than there is Apple apps as well. And years ago, that didn't happen. Now it's much more of a kind of integrated tool that people can make more use of. And more than often than not, we've spoken about this here, is Apple devices must be fully included in your security posture with the same level of protection and attention to your other endpoints, whether that's Mac or mobile. Just a reminder, download our 360 report, read it for a bit for some more context and details. The quick links are here, but you will get an email with those details in it as well. I'd like to just say thank you to everyone who's attended. Thank you for everyone getting involved in the conversation today. We probably could have gone for another hour and still had questions and dived into this. So we've maximized the time right up to the minute. If you have any questions or you'd like to connect, please feel free to contact Dino, Andy, our CISO here, who couldn't be with us today, or myself. We're always happy to help network with the community. So have a great day and thank you for your time.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. I think everyone enjoyed it. Lots of good comments and good questions. We know the importance of continuing basic cyber hygiene applies to Apple as to any other devices. And even if people think Apple is a wonderful product, secure, this could be applicable to other products and services. It's really good in the lab or it's good written up, but you have to see how it integrates into your organization. Does it, how does it work with your other apps, with your other operations, and does it achieve your business objectives? All those good high level stuff. Thank you. We learned too about CVEs as being a publicly available vulnerability area, and new, as you mentioned, Dino, as of March this year, is the EPSS, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System. So that's something other people can look at as well,
Yes.
perhaps in light of the funding challenges to the CVEs. People learning about the DMA and the side loading app issues. Good to hear that many Apple apps are on the Microsoft store. So that maybe is another angle to that.
Yeah, other way around. Microsoft apps on the Apple Store, not the
okay.
apps
Sorry. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
all good.
Oh, right. It couldn't be the other way. Yes, right. It has to be that way. So that also is in favor of the integration capabilities that Jamf supports vendors on. Okay. Thank you. We end the session, and there's an opportunity, as mentioned, to look into the archive for the follow-up.
Thank you very much. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.